All right, hello and welcome to another Expert Inside interview. My name is John Golden from SalesPOP, online sales magazine, and Coavera, now formerly Pipeliner CRM, joining you as usual from sunny San Diego. And today I'm delighted to be joined by Bruce Cleveland, who is in lovely Bend, Oregon. How are you doing, Bruce?
I'm doing great. Nice to be here, John.
Yeah, and Bruce is the CEO and founder of Traction Gap Partners, a market engineering firm that delivers actionable go-to-market, category design, and growth strategies. You've helped take 8 companies to 1 billion plus in revenue as an investor and an early backer of Domixity, Marketo, Velocity, and previously a senior executive at Oracle, Siebel, Apple, and C3 AI. And you're the author of Traversing the Traction Gap and the new book, Market Engineering, because markets don't engineer themselves. So let's get straight into it, Bruce. What do you mean to define market engineering and how it's fundamentally different from, say, product marketing or classic go-to-market?
Well, I think those are elements of market engineering, but really market engineering itself is a term that I came up with for my first book, which is the title of my second. It's this intentional discipline process of designing and orchestrating every aspect of how your company defines, enters, and leads the market. It's not just through great products, but it's also by strategically creating the category, narrative, and the ecosystem that makes your success inevitable. And I think that it goes far beyond traditional marketing or branding. It integrates category design, positioning, messaging, storytelling, and thought leadership into a unified operating system that, unlike a lot of suggestions by the title of market and marketing, is really owned by the CEO
Mhm.
and the executive team. Marketing's involved, the head of marketing is involved, but the CEO is the only one who really controls the scope of budget, resources, and can apply those across the organization as needed to affect this market engineering discipline. So today, when we have technologies that can be replicated pretty simply, it used to be a while ago that technology was our moat.
Yeah.
That's no longer true. And many technologies are commoditized. So market
Mhm.
engineering, though, it provides the frameworks, a playbook, uh, cultural discipline to build what I call lasting differentiation. And it mobilizes your communities of interest that you can script them into the process, your partners, the media, analysts, your customers. They all become part of the um, effort to engineer a market. And what I learned by being a product executive, senior executive in some pretty decent companies,
Mhm.
we created the CRM industry at
Yep.
Siebel. What I learned from working with great people like Steve Jobs and Mark Benioff and Tom Siebel and a few other pretty notable people, Larry
Mhm.
Ellison, is that product engineering is really just table stakes. You have to have great product engineering, but it's the discipline of market engineering, those 5 tenets that I described, the category design or redesign,
Mhm.
the positioning, messaging, storytelling, and ultimately leading into thought leadership. Those are really what define the enduring companies that we all think about as being market leaders.
Yeah, and it's interesting with those, those 5 core tenets is they're often very disparate in organizations. Those pieces, or they're not addressed with the same rigor as, say, the actual product is. I mean, to back to your point about a lot of companies focus all the rigor on the product and not the same kind of rigor on what you're talking about here for market engineering.
Yeah, the unfortunate part, there's 2 groups. One would be the startup group, and the other are the companies that aren't startups anymore, but are relatively mature. The failure rates for product is pretty dismal. If you're a startup in a B2B world, it's around an 80 to 85% failure rate. And startups being those are the VC funded ones. That
Yep.
doesn't include all the other ones that didn't get funding.
Yeah. Yeah.
In B2B, I'm afraid in B2C, I'm afraid it's worse. It's around 96% failure rate. And in large companies, new product offerings anywhere from 50 to 60% failure rates. So
Mm.
those are pretty big statistics when we invest a significant amount of time, effort, resources into making these companies and products successful. And so as I look back and thought about, well, why were the things that I invested in or the companies I joined,
Mhm.
why were we successful? And almost universally, I guess the one exception might be biotech. If you invent something that cures a form of cancer, you might get a pass on the
Yeah,
market
yeah,
engineering part.
yeah.
But the rest of us poor people, we have to suffer from, we have to engineer a market. We have to create demand and awareness for what we're building. And then we have to create a compelling reason for people to want to listen to what we have to say and to use our products and services that we would hope to then gain market leadership with.
Mhm. And you've been involved, as you mentioned, in designing a category and launching categories and stuff. How you know how difficult is that? I mean, you went to, I think Mercator was probably one of them examples, but how difficult is it to create an own and category?
Well, it's not as expensive as you might think, but it isn't easy. I don't want to make that claim. It requires, and this is the reason I put engineering associated with market, where most
Mhm.
people would think that's kind of a strange, combination of words. Um, there is a discipline to doing this. I have done it myself now multiple times. I've worked with companies that I've helped to do it. And the knock against it is it takes 18 to 24 months to really introduce the category, get
Mhm.
people behind it, people being analysts,
Yeah.
the media, your VC investors. I mean, that's one of the bigger knocks is, hey, they don't want to wait around. The problem is my best clients today are the ones who didn't do this work,
Right.
went through millions of dollars of really, really expensive equity investment, only to realize very little for that investment. They're still wrapped up in the cacophony of everyone else's noise and exhaust, if you will. So doing this, I think, is fundamental. Every company needs to do it, whether you can be successful at it or not. That is one of the reasons I wrote this book as a recipe book. My first book was prescriptive. This one is as well. It's not just a tale of many others. It's really, here's
Mm.
how you do it from A to B. The problem is it's not necessarily an innate talent for most teams. I happen to have worked with a couple of people who just were innate market engineers. They wouldn't describe themselves as such.
Yeah.
People like, like Larry Ellison or Tom
Mhm.
Siebel or Mark Benioff. They all know how to do this really well. And the reason that you know their names is because they know how to do it really
Yeah, yeah,
well. Right.
absolutely.
But most people that start these, especially technology startups, they start out as engineers.
Yeah.
And so this is not necessarily innate to them. And the reason I wanted to write the book was when I wrote the first book, I wrote it for a specific reason. I was in venture capital at the time.
Mhm.
It was a brand new venture firm. I had to create a marketing device that differentiated who we were, just like every company has to.
Yeah.
And so I wrote the first one as a prescriptive guide for entrepreneurial teams, so they understood what the investor was thinking on the other side. I introduced the term market engineering there, but I really wrote that first one as a roadmap, how to go from go to product to go to market to go to scale. I always knew the second book was kind of the flip side of that book, which was, okay, Bruce, you wrote about this roadmap. What's the
Mhm.
vehicle? How do I do it? And
Yeah.
so that's what this new book is about. So to your point, most teams, they just don't have these embedded skills, and the VCs are not necessarily supportive of investing in some of these concepts because they know that it does take a while to get it to get people to adopt your language, your vocabulary, right? Your view of the world. And if you're not good at it, or if the VCs don't particularly think it's a great, they don't particularly believe in this process because it takes a
Mm.
while, then it's tough to get through the through the hoop.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And yeah, as you know, those they have their time frames too. So sometimes you're not going to, something like this is going to fit outside of their time frame.
Right.
Um, just talk a little bit about, because I do think this is really important, because there's a lot of people been talking about storytelling lately and like authentic myth. Tell me the difference between messaging and storytelling, because they're often used interchangeably, and I think they're often getting confused.
Yeah. So the five tenets, which include storytelling, but
Hmm.
positioning and messaging. So it is a logical order of events. Okay,
Hmm.
first coming up with the name of the category, which is really just a name of a problem.
Hmm.
Consumer, it's a little different. It's a little more clever and
Yeah.
catchy. In the business world, less so. But
Hmm.
CRM isn't exactly catchy. Um, but, um, but it does describe a problem that we all recognize as a problem. It gives us something to a word or a phrase to use that eventually, if we do it enough, everybody kind of adopts it.
Hmm.
But storytelling is really a function of linking together the category design, the positioning of your company, and the messaging, the words that you use to
Hmm.
describe. So positionings fit in and stand out. How do I fit into the current environment? How do we stand out? The category design is about creating a new category that people can grok. And why do you want to do that? Well, a good friend of mine who wrote, he and a couple of his cohorts wrote Play Bigger, Christopher Lochhead,
Oh
great
yeah,
guy.
yeah, yeah.
So he and I were arch enemies at one point, now good friends. And he wrote that 76% of all profits inure to the category leader. So to me, it's just in this game of high stakes poker with VC backed firms, we need to become the category leader. That is the outcome that is necessary to generate these large returns. So storytelling is how do I tell something, how do I create a reality distortion field. I think
Mm,
Steve Jobs was probably the best that I've ever heard do it. He just had a way of telling us, hey, this is the world that you currently live in, but look how cool it's going to be if
mhm.
everybody uses my products.
Yeah,
And he was sort of right. Well, certainly very right with most of
yeah.
those products, right? So that's it. To me, storytelling is this. I think just telling a story to tell the story for its on its own is not really that
Mhm,
compelling. If if you can get the introduce a new language vernacular into the industry, if you can create interesting words and ideas that people will listen to and engage with, and you
mhm.
can wrap that into an epic story that people, where the hero saves the day because this product, created a cyber event that would have done whatever it is.
Yeah,
If you can do that, if you link those things together, that's what creates, I think, people followers who will
yeah,
listen to you, right? And want to go to your events and they want to buy your product because they want to be part of your club. So that's how
yeah.
I look at storytelling.
Yeah, no, I agree with you, and I think it has to be it has to be authentic, and it has to be relatable, and it has to, as you said, I mean, it has to logically flow from the rest of what you've been doing with your messaging and your positioning. The other thing is the other part is thought leadership, and I just think that is something that has, again, it has kind of been thrown around and all of that, and it is, I think it has been diminished a little bit in uh, because of the say, because it's the terms being thrown around a lot, like thought
Yeah.
leadership. Everybody's a thought leader. So talk to me about what does really good and authentic and really high value thought leadership look like?
Okay, so one of the things I say in the book is that these ingredients, these five tenets, there's been books written about each and every one of them
Yeah.
multiple times, and so I equate this to a chef. There's a Michelin star chef, and there's the guy that cooks. That's a short order cook at Bob's down on at
Mhm.
the diner locally. They both use flour. They use a cut of beef. They have oil. They've got seasonings, etc. But we could argue that
Mhm.
one is not like the other. And
Yeah.
so for me, thought leadership is really kind of what the Michelin star chef does, which is they explore the integration of these ingredients in a different way and maybe introduce other ingredients into the conversation that force people in the form of, if you're eating, if you're dining, you're experiencing a new type of flavor, a new culinary
Mhm.
experience, including the atmosphere that
Yeah.
surrounds you. And in what we're talking about here, it's the way that we integrate our words and the entire experience in such a way that people believe you are saying something different. You are giving them a new idea, a new way to frame the world, a new way to describe the problems,
Mhm.
or in a consumer, a new type of product that solves something differently than has been solved before. So
Mhm.
I think, to me, that's what gets people to listen to you. I mean, in a lot of ways, if you go to a state college and you study physics, it's going to be probably the same book, that Harvard or
Yeah.
MIT might use. It's certainly the same fundamental principles.
Mhm.
But if your professor is really interesting and can teach you these ideas in a
Mhm.
different way than you thought of, that's
Yes.
thought leadership. And that's why I think people pay extra. I mean, one, the networking, sure, but also I think because the professors who are at those, maybe what we these Ivy League schools, have a way of weaving this stuff together in perhaps a more interesting way than others. Not in
Yeah.
all cases, but in many cases.
Yeah, absolutely. And what are some of the, if somebody's going to start this process and wants to do, wants to attempt market engineering, what are some of the pitfalls that they should watch out for?
Um, well, one of them is being afraid to be different.
Mm.
I think a lot of the technology CEOs, they do come from an engineering background. Everything is fact based. Uh, you don't say things that are not true.
Mhm.
And I'm not saying that you have to
Yeah.
be not true, but you're very cautious about delivering ultimatums or saying things that don't have foundational
Yeah.
fact to them. Well, in some ways, we're trying to upset the facts,
Mhm.
and you're going to get called out. People are not going to necessarily agree with you. In fact, in many cases, if they're competitors, they're going to disagree with you.
Yeah.
So for the first time, your professor or teacher isn't patting you on the back about how smart you are. You're going to have a lot of people who tell you how dumb you are or
Yeah.
how wrong you are.
Yeah.
And for many different reasons, this is not comfortable territory for a lot
Mhm.
of people. For people who are like Mark Benioff and, a showman, right?
Yeah.
Who orchestrates these category launches, at every Dreamforce,
Mhm.
or others. I mean, we all know who these people are, the ringmasters of this.
Yeah.
Um, this is not comfortable territory, I think, for a lot of people. But somebody has to step up and do this job. I think at Marketo, Phil Fernandez, and John Miller and Dave Morandi were the three. It was just the three of them, no product when I invested in them. It was
Right.
just, I don't know if a dog was involved, but maybe it was. So, but it was
Yeah,
definitely John, Dave, and,
I think the
and
dog
Phil.
was key.
Yeah, exactly. But Phil did not really want to be the big spokesman, and so John emerged. And he's
Mhm.
not what you might think of as a typical. He has a degree in physics, out of Harvard, and then went to Stanford. He's very quiet, but he speaks with authority, and
Mhm.
he doesn't say nonsensical things. And so John, and many people still regard him as the father of modern day marketing,
Mhm.
and as a result of that, his these definitive guides to a variety of different marketing related topics were things that John wrote. And he's still a good friend, and I still very much respect his insights. So I think that's a problem for a lot of CEOs, and I think that's where this thing falls down. You do have to be willing to sort of break out of the box, come up with a provocative idea, call something different, and then support it, whether people are agreeing with you or not. and that can take some intestinal fortitude.
Yeah, no, 100%. And one last question, right? One of the things, AI is obviously accelerating a lot of things. It's compressing product development timelines. People are producing, products at record speed or trying to get them to market. So, um, is market engineering in that environment even more important?
Well, I wrote a chapter about that in the book. I do believe it. I
Mhm.
believe it because just saying a bunch of garbage, which can happen, obviously with this content, is not what people are willing to read. They're not willing to listen. That's not about thought leadership. You
Mhm.
can use AI for market research. You can use it to help shape your language. But in the end, people are going to gravitate towards
Mhm.
humans who have interesting new ideas, thoughts, etc. You can amplify that. You can get a lot more work done. I do now. I use AI. I've written 7 applications that help you to generate your market engineering artifacts, a
Mhm.
blueprint, a messaging matrix, a chart, or whatever. I used to have to cobble that together by hand,
Yeah.
and it would take me, a couple of months working with the client. I can deliver that in depending upon how much the client wants to work with me,
Mhm.
in a few weeks.
Yeah.
So it's very useful, but it is not a replacement for true ingenuity. And I think
Mhm.
that's a mistake that people make. They just produce this stuff. No one's going to read it. So the one area I do think market engineering and AI come together really, really well is, and Google announced yesterday that search is changing,
Mm.
and that we're not going to get those just small little snippets. We don't have the 10 blue lines, that we would click
Yeah.
on. That SEO, yes, is part of it, but AEO,
Yeah.
agentic, is really where everything is moving, and you'll be able to set up research agents and a bunch of different things. I just wrote a newsletter on this today. So I think that in this case, there's two audiences for what we're saying. There's our human audiences,
Yeah.
and there are the AI audiences.
Yeah.
And we have
Absolutely.
to revamp our websites and all of our content to make sure that everything that we
Mhm.
write about gets picked up. And if we make it hard for the AIs to assemble it, then we could become invisible.
Yeah.
So we've got to reorient our websites for two audiences, and so there's a different way of doing that, a different tagging structure, and yeah, and so on. So I think that is where it really does come together in a really credible, visceral way.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I totally agree. Well, listen, thanks so much, Bruce. This has been really, really fascinating. All of Bruce's information will be below this video. But before you go, please do remind people about what you do.
Yeah, so I'm the CEO of Traction Gap Partners. We're a market engineering studio. We work with enterprise teams as well as startups, helping them to engineer markets, whether it's a new product launch or whether it's a new company launch. And we enjoy doing it and work with a variety of different people globally.
Excellent. Well, listen, thanks again, Bruce. Thank you for watching and listening. And I'll see you all again very soon.